This is an embarrassing thing to admit out loud, but I've recently found a great guilty pleasure that I've been consuming like junk food. It's those ridiculously cringe podcasts where a few dudes, pseudo intellectuals, bring on a bunch of women and have the worst debates of all time. It's a forsaken wasteland where normal thinking goes to die. A thunderdome of delusion. It is brain melting. It reminds me of those old PSAs for the dangers of smoking cigarettes, and they'll like open up someone's chest and be like, this is what your lungs look like when you smoke, and it's like yellow and oozing, covered in this like disgusting slime, and it's very fucking yucky. This is like that, but instead of showing you your lungs on cigarettes, it's your brain when watching this content, and it's fucking revolting. Like, it is actual brain rot, and I can't look away.
And goes into a marriage and has kids when they're like 18, 19, 20. And then a year into the relationship, it gets really, really abusive.
From who?
From both.
This is so rare.
Anyone
So
really.
rare.
I mean, it happens.
Go on.
My point is, I'm just, even though it might be rare from what you guys think.
It is.
I already just find this painful. She's asking a very simple question and setting it up, talking about abuse. And already the dudes here are like, this is ridiculous. This is exceptionally rare. This is damn near science fiction. Abuse? Never even heard of it. That's like winning the lottery twice level of astronomical odds. Abuse is, it is very uncommon. Very rare. As a way of trying to like kind of shut it down already, like, you're choosing something very fringe and outlandish. Abuse is, it's like a unicorn. It almost doesn't exist. But anyway, crazy lady, go on with your hypothetical abuse thing, or whatever you called it. It's just trying to downplay it, which I think is just cringe.
If it would happen, what would you recommend for those people to do? Would they divorce, or do you want them to keep going in the relationship?
Keep going.
You can't divorce. I mean, that's not a real thing. You can like separate. See, his Catholic background shines through. He knows. You can't divorce. You can separate, but you can't actually divorce. That's not a real thing.
Even though it might be like physically abusive.
You got to endure. People are too.
You want to stick in the
People
relationship.
are just.
See, I mean, look,
people
I'm gonna be
nowadays
honest.
are just. Everybody quits. Everybody gives up. It's too hard. I'm this XYZ. This is why I'm special, so I can fuck up this entire situation based upon me being special.
The clown puts himself front and center here. You're looking at the chief entertainment for this episode. Fucking discount Walmart brand Sal from Impractical Jokers here. His name's Jonathan, and let me just tell you, he's got some opinions, and man, oh man, are they a stinker. So, the question is very simple. If there's an abusive relationship, an abusive marriage, should the marriage end? You know, if the woman is being abused, or even if the man is being abused. The woman who asked the question, her name is Melina, and she doesn't just make it exclusive to women getting abused. Men can also be victims of abuse. Something that Jonathan heavily disagrees with. We'll get to that later on. But he is saying that, oh, if it's an abusive relationship, you have to endure. This is the problem with snowflake society now. Everyone's such a pussy, so they'll ruin a marriage because they think they're so special. You absolute fucking troglodyte. It's not about being special, it's about not getting beat the fuck up in a marriage. There's no excuse for abusing your spouse, whether it's physical or mental. Like, it's the most... There is a right answer to this question. And the answer is yes, the marriage should end if it's abusive. 100%. Whether it's the woman or the man being abused, it should straight up end. There's no enduring. This isn't one of those situations where it's like, you know, there's greener pastures once you get through a couple of the black eyes and broken bones. You know, my husband may have beat the fuck out of me a couple nights ago, but he also took me to a really fancy steakhouse and I had an absolute bangin' filet. So, you know, all of the abuse was worth it, and I'm a little happier today. It's ridiculous. This is honestly making me concerned. My heart is breaking for whatever woman he's in a relationship with. I'm imagining this guy treating relationships like it's Fight Club. If my partner can't roll with my knuckle sandwiches without crying about it and she wants to leave for it, well then good riddance to her toots. Jesus Christ, special snowflakes can't handle a few of my right hooks. Ridiculous. That's frightening. That is a frightening mentality. That you're telling someone to just endure physical or even mental abuse in a relationship and calling them like a special snowflake or a pussy if they don't. That's crazy. And also his cohort there, the goofball he's in cahoots with, who's like, man, divorce isn't real. Divorce is make-believe. It's hocus pocus. There's no such thing as divorce. Yes, if you're getting abused, you can't divorce, obviously. This is a wild episode.
And the reality is people just haven't learned to endure. There have been hard times in relationship. I'm sure you guys had hard times in relationship. Any relationship has hard times.
Okay.
And it is what it is. You need to push through and you need to endure because we're in this
abused?
hold on. Because we're in this situation now, like where everybody's just creating this like super nuanced, like 1% example of like, well, what if the kid's transgender, black, and abused, and he's a Black Lives Matter supporter? Like, cool, okay, I get like that one minute
no, but I'm asking
situation.
for anyone that might be in that situation, what would you recommend?
Okay,
endure.
I'll tell you
Would
what.
they give up
I'll tell you what
Endure.
I would
I don't-
do.
that's-
I'll tell you what.
Endure.
I'll tell you what I would do.
A lot of diarrhea fell out of his mouth on this one here, so there's a lot to break down. He had an actual episode of psychosis there. He just started spitting shit that never even came up. It's a very simple question. It really wasn't nuanced. She just said, in an abusive relationship, should the marriage end? It really doesn't get more simple than that. A fucking child could understand the question. There wasn't anything about, like, all these nuance that you bring up. But anyway, Smash Mouth has his meltdown there for a second, but his message is still the same. No matter what, you gotta endure. You gotta endure the abuse. He even has the chutzpah to equate abuse to just a hard time in a relationship, as if it's just some little obstacle, little hiccup that every relationship goes through. Brother, abuse is not a hard time in a relationship. That is a fucking crime. That is when a relationship ends, should end.
I wouldn't want my daughter in that situation, quite frankly. And I understand the argument to endure because I have people close to me who grew up in abusive households and it lasted for periods of time and it was a phase and they endured through it and they ended up raising healthy, successful families.
Their faces really tell the whole story here. This reaction's pretty on par with that statement. Abuse is not a phase. It shouldn't be a phase. This isn't a normal thing. There's no reason to start normalizing abusive relationships as something every couple needs to go through or will go through. Abuse isn't acceptable. Full stop. Like that's where this was a really easy slam dunk for these dudes to answer. Should a marriage end when it gets abusive, whether for the woman or the man? And the answer is easy. It's yes. A relationship isn't something where there should be an abusive phase. If there is an abusive partner, that partner needs to seek legitimate help and get help for controlling whatever violent urges or impulses they have. But that doesn't mean that the other partner needs to stay in the relationship while they're getting that help. Especially not if there's children in the household, because not only is it dangerous for the partner, it's dangerous for the kid to be around as well. I think it's very simple. I don't think it's that nuanced. Abuse just isn't acceptable. Like, that's a super easy thing for a normal person to answer, but we've cultivated this culture online where everything needs to be like a debate, even on the simplest topics. Like, you just saw Smash Mouth have that meltdown, like, oh, you're getting into all this crazy 0.1% example nuance of abuse and then all of these other factors, like, out of nowhere, when that wasn't even what was discussed. It is the easiest black and white question.
To an extent.
So you would say that to stick in those relationships that might be abusive to everyone involved and a child, if there's a child.
I'm not
involved.
saying like, hey, stick in the relationship and get the shit beat out of you by a
No,
husband.
I'm not. It's an
I
extreme.
think you guys.
I'm just asking you what you believe.
I'm just telling you.
Specific thing. Even if
I'm not
it's a
telling
small
you.
extreme thing, I'm just asking you what you think if you should stick in that relationship or not.
It is such an extreme example that I can't give a prescription for what other people should do. There is an element.
God damn it, it's not even an extreme example. If you just Google it for like 15 seconds, there's so many different studies conducted on the topic, and according to a lot of the different numbers, all of which are a little different, but most of them agree that at least 20% of all marriages are abusive at some point in time. And that's just in reported cases. Like, it's not an extreme example. It's really not. But even if it was, it doesn't even change the question. Like, even in the extreme example here, it's still a very easy answer that, yes, that marriage should end. There is a problem. Now, this guy here is trying to play nice with everybody, so he's like, oh, yes, even this goober over here talking about endure. I mean, there's almost an element of something salvageable of his point. When there's not, like, there's no excuse. Like, you shouldn't be enduring abuse, like, under any circumstance, but he's really trying to give an olive branch over there for some fucking reason. But This guy is at least admitting, like, he wouldn't want his daughter in that. So he does outright say, like, yes, a woman shouldn't be getting the shit beat out of her in a marriage or relationship and she should leave. He at least will concede that, whereas the other two guys still, for some reason, fight tooth and nail that, nah, there's really no reason to be leaving.
Like that.
Do you have opinions about third trimester abortion?
It's
Yes.
terrible.
Listen, it's
Okay,
terrible.
look at how quickly you can debate it. Do you know how rare third trimester abortions are? They're also really
They
rare,
are.
but you immediately had a visceral reaction to that,
Yeah.
right? There are households where parents are abusive to children. Like, that's not like an unfathomable thing. But for you to have that immediate visceral reaction to a type of abortion that's so incredibly rare. But
Yeah,
then when
but
it's
I
like,
mean, we're
well, could you
talking
have-
about like a guy like getting drunk and like, you know, beating
have to be
beating his
getting
wife
drunk.
occasionally versus like
I actually think that was a really good point from Destiny there. Like, you have a very quick reaction to another extreme example. Why do you not have that same energy when it comes to abusive households? And then the guy starts making some shit up like, we're talking about a guy getting drunk and maybe putting his hands on his wife. Where is that coming from? The question was so simple. They're making up like a whole fanfic plotline in their head about what was asked when it was really super simple. Abusive household. Should the marriage end? Like, I actually wonder if she had even just said something even more simple and broad, what the response would have been. If she had asked, do you guys think abuse is bad? I wonder what they would have said. I wager that they would have been like, okay, we need to define what abuse is because all of these special snowflakes have weird definitions for abuse. So let's start really getting into the nitty-gritty of what is abuse. Even though it's so easy, abuse is just bad. And an abusive relationship is bad. I don't know what's so hard about it. I don't know what's so hard about them just admitting that.
Could there
But
possibly
well,
be
okay,
a
so
difference?
Yeah.
let me ask you guys. In the Catholic Church, I know that there's like annulments for marriages and stuff. Are there
That
no
was a mistake.
Are there no exceptions for like if a guy is beating his wife constantly?
No, there are, but now
Or a woman could as well, right?
Hold on.
Well, there's
Yes,
also a
she could, but-
distinction drawn between.
If a woman's beating a dude,
legal
that
Hold
guy-
on, hold on, guys.
Oh man, blubbery ass Jonathan there just got saved big time by the guy in the middle. He wanted so badly to say that if a man's getting beat by his girl, then he's a pussy or he's like a weak bitch or something. He wanted so badly to try and get that kind of bravado out there. Sad to see that this mentality still exists somehow, that men can't be the victims of abuse. I thought we got rid of that stigma years ago. Jonathan's supposed to be a men's self-help guru. How? Actually, how?
Since divorces that are initiated by women, Brian,
78.
80%.
78.
80%.
80%. And what percentage of those women have college degrees?
Well, it jumps to 90% if they're college educated.
real.
Brian, please present the stats to the class. What percentage of divorces are initiated by women? 80%? Thank you, Poindexter, that's sickening. 90% if they're college educated? I rest my case. That's why I only marry 18-year-olds now. They're too young to have a college degree, thus they can't divorce me. What does this have to do with anything? Okay, so you don't want to marry college-educated women? You want to marry dumb women? Like, I don't know. What, you want to just marry a lobotomite sex doll? Cool, like, who cares? It doesn't matter. This has nothing to do with the core question anymore. It's gone fully off the rails and unhinged. They're so focused on picking apart divorce itself. So now they're spouting these stats and making each other mad. So one of the dudes is like, real. And then the other guy is taking a huge deep breath. Why, I oughta. Just hearing that number's making me mad enough to put hands on my spouse because she might have considered a divorce at some point. Like, it's ridiculous. This has nothing to do with what was asked.
They
Can
are
I ask-
extreme.
Well, I
I'll ask
agree- I
another-
agree with that,
I want to ask
but-
like one more scenario, okay?
Please.
What about if
I was giggling so fucking hard because you can hear, I'm pretty sure it's Jonathan go, oh, Jesus. When she says she wants to ask another scenario. Why are you even here? The whole point is to communicate with the women, your guests, right? To ask them stupid questions and shit. Like, if you're so bothered with them talking, what the fuck are you even doing there?
two people get married, they have a kid, and then the wife starts cheating? Do you think they should divorce?
Absolutely.
They should
Yeah.
divorce then?
Jesus himself
You don't
said.
think
But it
it's
wasn't
an
Jesus,
illegal.
hold on, hold on.
adultery.
Jesus
And you
himself
could like
said.
work things through, right?
Jesus himself said in cases of adultery, divorce is
So you think that
permissible.
divorce is worse than physical abuse?
No,
For the
cheating.
Or
children?
cheating, sorry. You think
Cheating
that
is
cheating
worse
is
than
worse than
physical
physical
abuse.
abuse?
For the
Sorry.
children, yes.
I actually let out a full belly laugh. So she brings up cheating and unanimously like, yes, obviously you have to divorce when the woman's being a whore. If you've got a slut for a wife, you gotta fucking divorce that harlot, that harpy. Duh. Are you stupid, lady? Absolutely, you have to divorce there. After they spent like 6 minutes about, well, actually, divorce is one of the most evil things that can ever happen. Divorce is unacceptable. Physical abuse, okay, abuse, you have to endure because you can't divorce. But then when it's cheating, it's like, yeah, you gotta divorce. Jonathan even says crucifixion is warranted. I'm sure he's just being exaggeratory, but he does point blank say that cheating is worse than abuse for the kids, which is a wild take. Both are awful. Your father beating your mother or your mother beating your father in front of your kid is just as damaging as one of them being unfaithful. These are both horrible things, both of which should end in divorce. But for some reason, they seem to only have a real visceral response when it comes to cheating. And then the guy in the middle even gets immediately religious, like, well, in the Bible it says, you know, when cheating's on the table, that's when divorce is absolutely necessary. Well, what the fuck? The Bible also doesn't preach for beating the fuck out of your spouse either. I'm sure you can also divorce in a case like that, so why didn't we get biblical when abuse was brought up? Why did we start trying to justify different levels of abuse and it might be a phase where it's going to get better after and this and that? Dude even wove a whole fanfic about like, we're talking about a man who gets drunk and maybe occasionally hits his wife. Like, what the fuck? Like, why are you making excuses for abuse and not for cheating all of a sudden, right? Like, and Melina even calls that out. She's like, oh, well, what about, like, working through it or, you know, maybe the cheating's a phase. And like, no, absolutely not. Cheating is the end-all, be-all. This is just crazy. Like, I was absolutely howling with laughter when we got to this segment in the podcast.
I think I'm not going to say this is worse. Divorce is worse for the children. I already said that if a woman's getting abused, yeah, I think she should leave. Like, I mean, if it's a brief temporary thing, like,
What if it's mental abuse?
Okay, now
Do you
it's
think
less
if
cut and
it's-
dry.
if it's
You
cheating
are
and
setting
mental
your
abuse.
child up.
I think there's a small chance that Jonathan may have misunderstood the question. He may have thought he heard, is divorce worse than abuse? And that's what he was saying, that divorce is worse than abuse for the kids. Which is still a fucking stupid take, so I'm gonna tackle that one as well. What the fuck, man? You think that somehow kids witnessing their parents beating the shit out of each other is somehow less damaging than if they had just gotten divorced? You've got some issues you need to work through, my goodness. And then also that lady that's behind them is saying that it's less cut and dry when it comes to mental abuse. Why? Abuse is abuse. What are you talking about? So far up until this point in the episode, she hasn't said too much. She mainly just kind of agrees with everything the guys say. But she says it's less cut and dry when it comes to mental abuse, which leads me to believe that she thinks it should be cut and dry when it comes to divorce for physical abuse. But she didn't say anything. She didn't chime up and say like, hey, I agree, the marriage should end then. She just stayed silent because I guess she was just looking for things to fight them on as opposed to agree with, which I think is always such a weird component of these debates where if you agree with your opponent, you're apparently losing, or you lose points by doing so, which is so fucking backwards. And that's why I think debates in general are kind of worthless, because it's never about changing someone's mind. It's always about just cementing your own beliefs and never faltering and never changing perspective on anything. So nothing good ever really comes from it, except for just general entertainment as a spectator. And this one had me giggling. So I wanted to talk about it a little bit. That's it. See ya.